the license application and give you practical tips to help you complete it correctly, and to give you every opportunity to demonstrate your experience and qualifications to get your California contractor's license. We will also help you get ready for your licensing exams and give you a link to a video that shows you exactly what to expect on your test day. Today's webcast is presented by the Contractors State License Board, the government agency responsible for regulating California's construction industry.
Good morning. CSLB is overseen by a 15-member board that directs administrative policy for our operations. Our board is made up of 10 public members, including 1 labor representative, 1 local building official, and 1 representative of a statewide senior citizen organization, and 5 contractors. Appointments are made by the governor and the state legislature.
If you're watching right now on either YouTube Live or Facebook Live and want to ask questions, you'll need to join us on WebEx. There's a banner with a link on the top of our homepage, cslb.ca.gov. That's also where you can download this presentation to follow along. The presentation file includes clickable bonus links that appear on slides throughout this workshop. We're going to present a lot of information today, so don't worry if you don't get it. We will archive the video of this workshop and put it on our YouTube channel so you can go back and watch it again. To ask a question on WebEx, use the Q&A feature, not the chat feature, on the bottom right of your screen. Make sure you send your questions to all panelists. Finally, we tend to get a lot of questions during these workshops on how you can document your work experience and what credit you can get for your education or military service. Those questions are fine, but we would ask that you wait to send us those questions until after you see that part of the workshop. We will go through your questions at the end of our presentation, which should last about 45 minutes.
The information obtained during this webcast is not, nor is intended to be legal advice. While this webcast contains general information, including legal guidelines for contractor license applications, it does not contain definitive statements of the law and may not reflect the most current legal developments in the construction industry. Such guidelines communicated or discussed during the webcast are for informational purposes only. If you have questions about the application of the law for specific situations, you should contact an attorney who is familiar with California construction law or review the latest edition of the CSLB publication, California Contractors License Law and Reference Book. You could download it for free on the CSLB website or purchase it directly from the publisher, LexisNexis. There are links for both at the bottom of the screen.
Here's a list of what we're going to cover today. We will take you through the process of applying for your California contractor's license. First, who needs a license? Why get a contractor's license? The minimum qualifications you need to get a license and what credits you might qualify for, the types of business entities, the different CSLB license classifications, including our new B2 residential remodeling classification. We will spend a lot of time giving you tips on how to help fill out your applications, including how to demonstrate your work experience to meet the minimum qualifications, fingerprint requirements for a criminal background check. We will help you get ready for the exam or exams you'll need to pass in order to get your license. And finally, the other things you'll need to have in place before your license is issued, things like bond and insurance.
First, we'll look at who needs a license. Here in California, a state contractor's license is needed for all construction projects priced at $500 or more. That includes both labor and materials, no matter who purchases the materials. The law doesn't let you break down a project into $499 pieces. It's an entire project. Also, you can't charge an hourly rate to get around the $500 threshold. If the hourly cost times the number of hours for the job totals $500 or more, you need a contractor's license. So what is the definition of a contractor? The definition comes from the state's Business and Professions Code. In this case, it's section 7026.1. We've got a link to that code at the top of the page if you download the presentation. I'll read the entire code, but pay special attention to the part we underlined. A contractor is any person consultant to an owner-builder, firm, association, organization, partnership, business trust, corporation, or company who or which undertakes, offers to undertake, purports to have the capacity to undertake, or submits a bid to construct any building or home improvement project or part thereof. In other words, you don't have to do the work to break the law. You must have a contractor's license just to advertise that you can do the construction work, or even to give a bid for a construction job if the bid totals $500 or more.
So you may be asking yourself, why should I get a license? Here are a few good reasons. First, you can take pride in being a licensed professional. It shows you've taken the steps to get licensed and you're serious about your career choice. It allows you to make valuable contributions to your local community. Unlicensed contractors must operate in the shadows and cannot help make their community a better place to live. Next, it allows you to get paid for the work you do. There is value to the work done by a licensed professional. Being licensed also gives you legal options if customers don't pay you. Unlicensed contractors do not have a legal right to take someone to court to get paid because the work required a license and they weren't licensed to do the work in the first place. Also, you would be able to use the mechanics lien laws. Next, you don't have to look over your shoulder with fear of getting caught. Contracting without a valid California license can lead to misdemeanor charges. Those caught face a first offense sentence of up to 6 months in jail and/or a $5,000 fine and potential administrative fines anywhere between $200 and $15,000. Subsequent violations can result in increased criminal penalties and fines. In addition, you may face felony charges if you contract without a license where one is required in a state or federally declared disaster area, or if you try to pass yourself off as a licensed contractor by illegally using a license number. Remember, there are no educational requirements to get a license. Also, you don't have to go to a license preparation school to get your contractor's license.
So, what do you need to get your license? First, it's important to understand that CSLB does not license individuals. We license companies or businesses, also called entities. Many entities are one-person operations, but know that every entity, even a one-person operation, must have a qualifier. That's someone who has the minimum experience and is responsible for the operations of the company. Here is the short list of minimum qualifications you will need. You must be at least 18 years of age. You must have either a valid Social Security number or a valid Individual Taxpayer Identification Number or ITIN. You can qualify the license in one of two ways. First, you can qualify the license by having at least 4 years experience within the last 10 years as a journeyperson, foreperson, supervising employee, or contractor in the trade being applied for. Or you can also get a qualifier for the license who has that required experience. We will spend time talking about how you can demonstrate your experience on your application later in this presentation.
It may be possible for you to substitute your education, technical training, and apprenticeship training for some of the required experience. We tend to get a lot of questions on this. First, CSLB cannot prejudge your experience. Due to the number of applications we receive and process every month, we don't have the staff time that would be needed to prejudge your experience. We can only review your documents after you apply for your license. Next, to get education credit, the coursework must be directly related to the work you will be doing as a contractor. Your education cannot be substituted for more than 3 years or 36 months of the required experience, meaning you will need at least 1 year of practical experience if you get the full 36 months of education credit. To apply for education credit, you must provide CSLB with written documentation. That means a copy of any apprenticeship completion certificates you earned, or get official technical school or college transcripts. Have your transcripts mailed to you. Do not open the envelope, leave it sealed, and include it with your CSLB applications packet. Note that high school courses will not earn you any credit towards your contractor's license.
If you are looking to get education credit to meet the 4 years or 48 months of experience, you need to get your transcripts first. This is the kind of credit you can expect to receive for your education. Note that for some areas, we are only giving you averages. You will see that your credit will be determined on a case-by-case basis. We're not going to be able to give you any more guidance than what you see on this slide. So, our best advice is do not rely on the combination of your experience and education credits to barely hit the 4-year experience mark. There is always the real possibility you will not get as much education credit as you were hoping. Let's go through the chart from the most credit you can get to the least. The most education credit you can get is for a Bachelor's of Science degree in Construction Management. That degree will get you the full 36 months of credit. Next is a master's or bachelor degree in business or a law degree. Any one of those will get you 24 months of credit. An associate in science degree in construction management will get you 18 months credit. A bachelor's degree in some other major will get you an average of 18 months credit. An associate degree in a major besides construction management will get you an average of 6 months credit. Credit for individual college classes is given on a case-by-case basis, usually with a maximum of 6 months credit. Apprenticeship completion certificates will get you 24 to 36 months, depending on the classification of the program. For example, a sheet metal worker's apprenticeship gets you 24 months credit for the C20 HVAC and the C43 sheet metal classifications only. A lineman apprenticeship gets you 36 months in C7 low voltage and C10 electrical classifications only. If you have transcripts for other technical training you've taken, you might be able to get some minimal credit as well. Again, don't use your education credits to try and squeak by the 4-year or 48-month requirement.
If you served in the military, some of that service might count as well. On the bottom of the page, you'll see a bonus link to our CSLB Military Application Assistance Program where you can learn more. The license qualifier also must pass 2 different exams, both taken on a computer at one of CSLB's authorized test centers. One exam is on California business law. The other is in the specific trade covered by the license. We also have limited specialty licenses, which we'll discuss later. Those licenses only require the qualifier to take the law and business exam. As mentioned, the qualifier is the one who must take and pass the required exams or qualify for a waiver. We're not going to spend a lot of time on a waiver, only to note that you might be able to request a waiver from taking one or both exams in very specific situations. We recommend that you look at the CSLB website for more information on those specific situations. We have included a bonus link at the bottom of the page. The qualifier must undergo a criminal background check. We will go more in depth on that in a few minutes. After the license is issued, the qualifier must be in a position to exercise direct supervision and control of the company's operations. They are also responsible for all workmanship issues. It's also important to note here that if you're trying to get a B General Building Contractor license and you hire subcontractors to work under you, you're responsible as the project's prime contractor for the work that they do.
The next thing you're going to need to determine before applying for your license is what type of entity your business will be. There are 4 types. First is a sole ownership, where the owner or responsible managing employee may serve as the license qualifier. Just about 2/3 of the contracting businesses in California are sole ownerships. Second, a corporation, where either of the current officers designated as the responsible managing officer or the responsible managing employee may serve as a qualifier. Just under 1/3 of our licensees are corporations. A distant third is a partnership, where either of the general partners or responsible managing employee may serve as a qualifier. That's 2% of our licensees. Finally, a limited liability company, or LLC, where a responsible managing member, responsible managing manager, responsible managing officer, or responsible managing employee may serve as a qualifier. About 1.5% of California construction companies are LLCs.
Now, let's talk about license classifications. A contractor's license can include multiple classifications, although you must select one when filling out your application. While there are more than 40 license classifications in California, they all fall under 3 distinct categories. There's a bonus link to our classifications list at the bottom of this screen. First is Class A, or General Engineering Contractors. These are contractors who deal with fixed works that require specialized engineering knowledge and skill. A contractors are the ones who build projects such as freeways, skyscrapers, and dams. Today, there are over 19,000 A contractors in the state. Next is Class B, or General Building Contractors. This is the largest class of contractors in California, with more than 133,000. B contractors have a principal business dealing with any structure built, being built, or to be built that requires as part of its construction at least 2 unrelated building trades or crafts. In other words, a B contractor shouldn't take a prime contract for any project involving trades other than framing or carpentry unless the prime contract requires at least 2 unrelated building trades other than framing or carpentry. There is no limitation on B contractors to stop them from taking on projects that only include framing or carpentry. The final class is C, or Specialty Contractors. These licenses are for construction work that requires special skill and whose principal contracting business involves the use of specialized building trades or crafts. Examples from this class include C10 Electrical Contractors, C20 HVAC Contractors, C27 Landscaping Contractors, C36 plumbing contractors, C39 roofing contractors, C46 solar contractors, and C53 swimming pool contractors, just to name a few. There are also 30 limited specialty classes under the C61 classification. These include the C61 D34 prefabricated equipment class. More than 209,000 contractors hold a C license in California.
CSLB's newest licensing classification is called the B2 Residential Remodeling Classification. The B2 allows contractors who don't have structural framing experience to get a license with CSLB. Here's what interested applicants need to know. B2 license holders must engage in 3 or more trades or crafts on a residential project. B2 licensees also are limited to working on existing residential wood frame structures. There are some things B2 license holders cannot do. They cannot make structural alterations to load-bearing partitions and walls. They cannot install or extend electrical or plumbing systems. They can make modifications to existing systems, for example, install recessed lighting or alter plumbing for 2 shower heads. B2 licensees also cannot install or replace an HVAC system. Like all other CSLB licensees, B2 applicants' licensees must comply with CSLB experience, examination, license bond, and workers' compensation insurance requirements. If you have more questions about the B2 license, email the classifications deputy at classifications@cslb.ca.gov.
When you're ready to apply for a license, here are the 2 forms you will need. On the left is the license application. On the right is the certification of work experience. You can get these forms on the CSLB website. There's a bonus link on the left side of the page, so be sure to download this presentation. We will give you a closer look at the different sections of these forms a little later.
Okay, now let's break down the steps of the application process. First, identify who will be the qualifier for your license. That person will be responsible for exercising direct supervision and control of the company. If you're using an RME or responsible managing employee as your qualifier, determine if they can qualify for an exam waiver. Be aware of companies you pay to connect you with a licensed qualifier. In some cases, these qualifiers cannot exercise the direct supervision needed, or they aren't willing, or don't understand their role as a qualifier. Next, make sure you complete the correct application. There are 2 options. 1, application for original contractor license. 2, application for original contractor license examination waiver 7065. We have a link to the forms and applications webpage at the bottom of this page.
The next step is to determine your company name. See the application instructions for examples. Some things to keep in mind. Your name cannot be misleading or imply that you qualify for a license classification other than what you're getting. For example, if you're going to apply for a C36 plumbing license, you cannot have a company of John Smith Plumbing Construction, Heating and Drywall. Corporate and LLC names must match exactly the name registered with the California Secretary of State's office. You can also use what is called a DBA, which stands for Doing Business As. The main things to remember here is the DBA name cannot be misleading, and you must use that name in all advertising and on all your contracts. Next, you'll want to get together certifications to support your work experience. You should do this even if you apply for an exam waiver. Feel free to use multiple pages if necessary. Next, be sure to note if you're a military veteran. Some of your military service may be used to meet your 4 years of experience qualifications. Also, your application may be expedited and receive a possible 50% reduction in your initial licensing fee through our Military Application Assistance Program. There's a bonus link at the bottom of the screen for more information on that program. To participate, you must have not been dishonorably discharged. Be sure to include a copy of your latest DD-214 long form paperwork showing your discharge status with your application. The next couple of items are basic but important. Proofread your application for any missing information. Make sure you have provided an answer to all necessary fields. Second, don't forget to sign and date the application. Finally, determine if you need special accommodations to take your exams. If so, complete a request form and submit it with your application. We'll talk about the use of translators a little later.
Next, let's take a closer look at our fingerprint requirements, which are used for a criminal background check. This is a list of those who must submit a full set of fingerprints to CSLB, depending on the type of business entity. All applicants, each corporate officer, each member and manager, each partner, each owner, the responsible managing employee, all home improvement salespersons. If you are in California, you must submit fingerprints electronically with what's called live scan. You can get an updated list of live scan locations in California, broken down by county, on the Attorney General's website. We have a link here, or you can simply go to the Attorney General's website and search for live scan. You will also see we have a bonus link at the bottom of the screen to the fingerprint information page on our CSLB website. If you are out of state, it's a longer process to get us your fingerprints. That's because you must submit hard copies of them the old-fashioned way. Those take anywhere between 3 and 6 months for the FBI and Department of Justice to process. So you might want to consider traveling to California to get your electronic live scan done here.
So what happens if you have any criminal convictions? CSLB may deny your license for the following reasons. First, if your conviction is substantially related to the duties, functions, and qualifications of a contractor. Also, if your conviction involves fraud or a violent crime. There are other factors CSLB also considers, which are the nature and severity of the crimes, the amount of time that has passed since a conviction, and any evidence of rehabilitation that you submit to CSLB. CSLB evaluates felony criminal convictions which occurred within 7 years of the application date. For misdemeanor criminal convictions, we would look back for 3 years of the application date. That's unless the convictions are for a violent felony, certain sexual crimes, or financial crimes related to construction. CSLB denies only 1% of the total applications we get based on criminal convictions. You'll also note the bonus link to our fingerprint information page.
Okay, along with the education credits we talked about earlier, this next section is probably the most important of the entire workshop, and the part of the application that causes the most questions for applicants. It is how you demonstrate your work experience on your application. Remember, the license qualifier needs 4 years or 48 months of experience within the past 10 years in the classification for which you're applying. The experience must be no less than a journeyman level or as a foreman, supervising employee, contractor, or owner builder. A journeyman is defined as an experienced worker who is fully qualified, as opposed to a trainee who can perform the trade without supervision or one who's completed an apprenticeship program.
There's a limited amount of space on the application to show your certified work experience, so feel free to use additional pages if needed and simply attach them at the end of the work experience form. Use as many certifications of work experience forms as you need to prove the required 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. Use a different form for each certifier. Be as accurate as possible. Make sure the person certifying your work describes the actual work you performed and the dates in which you performed them. We will now share some examples of both good and unacceptable descriptions to demonstrate your work experience. Do not copy and paste this information directly into your application. These are just examples.
At the top of this chart is the classification and type of experience you're trying to demonstrate. This first example is journey person experience. The overall theme we'll keep repeating is the more specific the description, the better. Note, the work experience form should be completed by your certifier, someone who has knowledge and has observed your work experience for the classification you're applying for. That person does not have to be a licensed contractor. Our first example is for the Class B general building contractor. The best type of description your certifier would use for a journey person experience is to be specific. Journey person experience must include hands-on work like this. Bob performed rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior, exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. An unacceptable description would be something generic like residential general building trades.
For 4-person experience, the description must include some hands-on work and/or supervisory work. Here's an example of the best type of description. Bob oversaw other staff at job site performing rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior, exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Again, an unacceptable description would be something generic like residential general building trades.
For supervising employee experience, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at a supervisor level. An example is, as a construction lead on multiple projects, Bob supervised rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes.
For out-of-state contractor experience, the description must include examples of work done that were out of state, military, on federal lands, or work for a government entity. Applicants can qualify as a journey person, foreperson, or supervising employee. A tip: be specific about your duties and employment circumstances.
Our next example is for the C27 landscaping contractor. The best type of description your certifier would use would be: Jane performed landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips and pathways, and tree pruning. An unacceptable explanation would be gardening, yard maintenance, planting.
For a C27 landscaping foreperson, the description should indicate overseeing other staff performing the trades. And for the C27 supervising employee, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at the supervisor level for the trades on a project.
Finally, for our out-of-state contractors, the same guidance that we showed you for general building contractors is required. Be sure to include examples of your out-of-state work as well as work for the military, on federal lands, or for a government entity. Be sure to be specific when you describe your duties and employment circumstances.
By law, CSLB must randomly review and verify all information provided on at least 3% of our applications. Our next 3 slides run down the acceptable documentation you can use to support your work experience in the event that your application was selected and you were asked to provide additional documentation. The supporting documentation should not be mailed in with your application. You will only need to provide this information if requested by CSLB staff. On the lower right of the screen, you'll see a link to this publication on our website along with additional information on experience documentation. If you look at the chart, you can see the first column is for documents you can use if you were employed by a licensed contractor. The second column is for documenting your experience if you've been self-employed. The third column is for documentation you will need if you're applying for a Class B general building contractor license and need to use the owner-builder experience to meet the experience requirements. Here's the next page of acceptable documentation. Again, you can click on the link to view and print this publication. If you don't have this information readily available, you may want to begin to gather it now, just in case you're asked to provide it in the future. Remember, you are trying to demonstrate 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. CSLB may contact the certifier of experience or other parties to verify experience.
One other note, CSLB gets more than 1,000 applications each month, so our application processing staff has seen it all. They've got 2 pieces of advice. First, don't cut and paste from this presentation. Also, don't try to get around having to take a trade test by applying for multiple subcategories under the C61 Limited Specialty Classification. Okay, that is the content you'll need to fill out your application. Before getting it to CSLB, double check it to make sure you didn't miss anything. Be sure to sign and date it as well.
Parts of the application, Section 1, Business Name and Address. Now that we've gone through the information you'll need to include, here's a closer look at the application so you can see where the information goes. Section 1 is where you list your business name. Remember, when selecting a business name, make sure the name you selected is compatible with the classification and entity that you're applying for and is not misleading. If your business is a corporation or LLC, you will need to make sure that the name you provide in this section matches exactly the business name registered with the Secretary of State. In line 2, you will indicate what classification you are applying for. The mailing address and phone number that you list on line 3A and 3C will be made public on CSLB's website once you are licensed. In Section 2, you will select your business entity. If you're applying as a corporation or LLC, you will need to provide your registration number provided to you by the Secretary of State. Make sure to pay extra attention to the instructions in this section pertaining to the entity for which you're applying.
Section 3, Qualifying Individual Full Legal Name and Address. In Section 3, you will list the qualifier's information. Remember, the qualifier is the person that meets the experience requirements and will be responsible for the direct supervision and control of construction operations. The qualifier will be the person taking the exams. On line 6, you will list any previous or current license numbers you've held. You will also need to list the percentage of the new business owned by the qualifier. On line 7, you will need to indicate what position will be held by the qualifier. Each entity has different personnel requirements. You will need to selected. You can find more information on this on pages 2 through 4 of the application instructions. Line 8 is where you will sign and date your application.
Section 4, Personnel, Full Legal Names and Addresses. Section 4 is where you'll list the personnel information for all remaining personnel that will be listed on the license. For example, if you're applying for a corporation, you'll need to indicate who will be the responsible managing officer or employee, president, secretary, and treasurer. Again, more information can be found on page 6 of the application instructions. If you'll have more than 4 people on your license, you can make additional copies of this page and include it with your application. For corporations and LLCs, every person who is an officer, responsible manager, or member, or director of a corporation or limited liability company shall be listed on the application as a member of the personnel of record for the license. All personnel that will be listed on the license must sign the application in Section 4.
Section 5 is a series of yes and no questions, so we're not going to cover those here. Section 6. Qualifier education, apprenticeship, licensure, and military. You may be granted credit towards the 4-year experience requirement based on your education. Question 17 asks if you have completed an educational or apprenticeship program. You will need to submit official sealed transcripts if you would like to be considered for educational credit. If you attended formal training or an apprenticeship program, you will need to provide a certificate of completion. Get those sealed transcripts mailed to you, then include the sealed transcripts with your application packet. Do not have the program send transcripts directly to CSLB. You don't want to take a chance that we're not able to match them up with your application. CSLB may grant you up to 3 years of credit based on your education. This credit is not on a year-to-year basis, meaning if you have a 2-year college degree, you won't necessarily be granted 2 years of credit towards the experience requirement. You may qualify for this credit regardless of when you completed your education. The 10-year time frame does not apply to education. You may also apply for this credit even if your education was received out of the country. If your degree is in any other language other than English, it must be translated and evaluated by an accredited evaluation service that does business with the United States.
Parts of the application, Certification of Work Experience, Part 1. Now we'll discuss the certification of work experience. Part 1 will be filled out by you, the applicant. Here you will list the information about your employer where you gained your experience. If you were self-employed when you gained the experience, please make sure to check the box in line 2. If you are applying for a B General Construction License and will be using experience obtained while working on your own property, make sure to mark the box in line 4 and complete an Owner-Builder Construction Project Experience form that we'll discuss later.
Certification of Work Experience, Part 2. Part 2 will be filled out by the certifier. In this section, the certifier must include the dates in which you obtained the experience. They must also select if you were working on a part-time or full-time basis. Keep in mind, if you were working part-time, you will receive 50% credit for that time, which means you will need to provide 8 years of experience within the last 10 years to meet the 4-year requirement. On line 6, your certifier will need to list the duties that you performed or supervised that are considered relatable for the classification that you are applying for. You can read a description of trade duties in CSLB's Description of Classifications booklet available on our website. Do not copy and paste the description from the booklet. This is only to give you an idea of what CSLB considers related trade duties for each classification. Your certifier should complete this section in their own words and be as complete and accurate as possible.
Certification of Work Experience, final part. The final part of the Work Experience Certificate is also to be completed by your certifier. They need to list their relationship to you and provide their contact information. Lastly, they will need to sign and date the certification.
Parts of the application, Owner Builder B General Building Construction Project Experience, Part 1 of 3. The next form we will discuss is the Owner Builder B General Building Construction Project Experience form. This form only needs to be completed if you're applying for a B General Construction license and you want to receive experience credit for working on projects on your own property. A separate form is required for each project. The experience must be verifiable through building permits, final inspections, and other documentation. You will need to list the building permit number on line 6. On line 7, you will need to provide the scope of the project. Owner Builder B General Building Construction Project Experience 2 of 3. In boxes 8 through 10, you'll need to provide more detailed information about the project. Owner Builder B General Building Construction Project Experience 3 of 3. Question 11 asks if other general construction contractors worked on the project and what trades they performed. Remember, this information should be as complete and accurate as possible.
With all the information we just covered, this is a good time to remind you that we're recording this workshop. We'll post the video on our YouTube channel so you can go back and rewatch it in case there's anything you missed. Okay, so you've got your application submitted. How do you check the status of that application? Here are 2 resources. First is the secured check. You'll need your application fee number and contractor PIN number to get an update. We'll send you that information after we receive, cashier, and key into the system your completed application. The second way to check is to look online at our processing times. Each week, we update our website with the date we receive the paperwork for a specific process. So look for the date being worked on, and know that if the date shown is after the date we likely received your paperwork, it's likely we're busy working on your application. As you can imagine, CSLB receives hundreds, if not thousands of documents every day, and we process them in the order they're received. So be sure to take extra time getting the application right so we don't have to send it back to you to correct and then start processing your application again.
When your application has been posted, CSLB will send you a notice to schedule for examination and a study guide. You may then schedule your exams through the online scheduling process. CSLB has many authorized test centers throughout California and encourages candidates to take their exams at their nearest test center.
If you're an applicant whose first language isn't English and you don't feel confident taking your exams in English, we do allow you to use a translator. The translator, who you provide, simply reads you the exam questions. The CSLB Law and Business exam is now available in Spanish. There's a link at the bottom of the page to read more about this new option. Question 16 on the application asks if you need to use a translator to complete the examination and the language the exam will be translated into. The translator must be approved by CSLB in advance. You cannot just show up on the day of your examination to the test center with someone to translate the exam for you. When you have an exam date, make sure you don't miss it. If you fail to appear for your exam, you'll have to pay a non-refundable $100 fee to reschedule. That fee may be waived once with documented evidence of a medical emergency or circumstance beyond your control. Also, we have study guides available for each of our exams. Included in each study guide, you'll find a list of sections and topics covered by the exam. They also include sample questions, how each section of the exam is weighted, and recommended resources that you can use to prepare for the examination. These study guides are available online on our website. There's a bonus link to them on the bottom of the screen. These study guides are also available in Spanish.
Here's a quick look at 2 of those study guides. The first is the Law and Business exam, which all qualifiers must take, no matter which license classification, including the D-Series limited classes. You can see the guide contains a breakdown of examination topics, some test strategies, sample questions, and resources that were used to help create that exam. You will see the same format on the B General Building Study Guide. We would recommend that you really pay attention to the exam content here, especially how we have broken down what percentage of questions there will be on each of the 5 topics on the exam. On the lower right of both of these 2 slides, you'll see bonus links to the actual study guide, as well as a link to the complete list of study guides.
On your testing day, plan to arrive at least 15 minutes early for your exam. Give yourself extra time to get checked in. Follow the instructions provided online when scheduling your exam date. We've also produced a short What to Expect on Test Day video that you can watch on our YouTube channel. The link is at the bottom of your screen.
You'll take your exam on a computer using a keyboard and mouse. Before starting, you'll see an on-screen tutorial that'll take you through the process. The exam itself consists of multiple choice questions. You'll also see a space on each question where you can, if you want, submit a comment about that question. You'll get 3.5 hours to complete each exam. Don't arrive late, or that may reduce the amount of time you get to complete your exam, or you may not be admitted to the exam and will have to reschedule. You will get your results at the end of the exam. If you don't pass the exam, you will not be allowed to review the questions you missed, but you will get a statement showing how you did on each section of the exam. You can reschedule the exam as many times as you need within the 18-month period, as long as you pay the non-refundable $100 rescheduling fee each time. Each rescheduled test must be at least 3 weeks following the previous test per rescheduling guidelines.
After you pass your exams, what happens next? First, you'll need to pay your initial license fee, $200 for a sole owner license and $350 for a non-sole owner license. That will be good for 2 years. You'll also need to complete an online asbestos open book exam. Plus, you'll need to file your required $25,000 contractor surety bond and possibly other bonds depending on what type of business entity you'll have. If you've got employees, you'll need to get workers' compensation insurance. If you don't have employees, you must file a workers' compensation exemption with CSLB. You can also submit this online. If you're going to be an LLC, you'll also need liability insurance. See our website for more information. Your insurance company or broker can submit your insurance information to CSLB directly on our website. Please note that workers' compensation insurance is also required for all contractors applying for the C8 concrete, C20 warm air heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, C22 asbestos abatement, C39 roofing, and C61 D49 tree service classifications, regardless of whether they have any employees. Effective January 1st, 2026, all licensees will be required to carry workers' compensation insurance regardless of the classification or whether they have any employees.
In about 5 to 10 business days after your license has been issued, CSLB will send you a wall certificate and plastic pocket license card. Display the wall certificate in your main office or chief place of business. Carry your pocket card with you, especially in situations where you're going to solicit business, talk to potential customers, or sign contracts. We encourage consumers to ask to see your pocket license. If you're going to have salespeople working for you, be sure to get them registered as a home improvement salesperson with CSLB. Check our website for more information on how to do that. Your license will be good for 2 years. It'll expire on the last day of the month when it was issued. Be sure to put that expiration date in your calendar, in your phone, anywhere you need so you won't forget it. CSLB will send you a renewal notice in the mail approximately 60 days before it expires, but ultimately it is your responsibility to renew your license on time.
Here are a couple of other important deadlines to keep in mind. First, notify CSLB within 90 days if you move or change your business address. Your renewal notice will be sent to the address of record that we have on file. If you're not at that address anymore, you're probably not going to get it. Plus, the Postal Service will not forward state government mail. Notify CSLB within 90 days of all changes to personnel on your license, especially when it involves the qualifier of the license.
Once you get your license and get to work, you might want to hire someone as a salesperson to solicit, sell, and negotiate home improvement contracts on your behalf outside of your place of business. These people are called home improvement salespersons, or HIS. Without an HIS, the official personnel of record on a license are the only ones who can solicit, sell, negotiate, or execute a contract. That includes individual contractors, license qualifiers, partners, corporation officers, and LLC responsible managing officers, members, managers, or employees. A HIS can work for more than one contractor. The licensee must notify CSLB when they either associate or disassociate an HIS with their license. This process can now be completed online as well.
There are a couple exceptions to note. First are those who only schedule appointments for the contractor or registered HIS, and bona fide service and repair people. These are the folks you call out for repairs, including things like air conditioning, heating, and plumbing. But those services and repair people are limited to the work that was initially requested by the buyer or homeowner. For example, if your AC goes out and you call an HVAC company to come out, the service person does not have to be a registered salesperson. But if they go beyond the repair itself and sell you a new HVAC system, they will have to be a registered HIS. Also, don't employ an unregistered salesperson. That subjects you to administrative discipline, and the salesperson might get a citation or possibly even a criminal misdemeanor. We've got bonus links at the bottom of this page if you want to look at the actual code sections of law.
Okay, that's our presentation for today. Now it's time to answer your questions. So looking at our questions, we'll start with the first one. I'm planning to start a parking lot maintenance company, which would involve asphalt pavement repair, asphalt seal coating, line stripping, and pavement painting. It would not involve asphalt painting other than repair work, and it would only be focused on parking lots, not roads. Other than those places people drive within a parking lot. I believe a C32 license is the most applicable, but I do not yet have the required combination of experience education to get a C32 license. Therefore, I'm planning to bring in an RMO as part of my company. I have a connection with an RMO who has a C8 license and another one with an A general engineering contractor's license. Would either of these licenses be sufficient as an RMO for my business, or is an RMO with a C32 license the only option for the business I plan to run? So for this, because there is a variety of tasks that you're looking to perform, I would suggest that your first course of action would be to send an email to our classifications deputy, and that's at classifications at cslb.ca.gov, and list very specifically all the duties that you want to perform and where. They'll give you all of the options of the classification you need, or depending upon those trades, classifications that you may need to hold, or your RMO hold in order to perform the. So once again, that's classifications at cslb.ca.gov. Our next one, does BS in construction management need to be done within the last 10 years to be granted any credit on applications? So education doesn't have the 10-year time frame. So any degree that you have and submit and want to see if you can be granted experience towards your experience does not have to be within the last 10 years. You just want to send that sealed transcript in, and they will evaluate it per the classification that you're getting, and issue the corresponding amount of credit to your experience. But no experience, no education experience has to be within the last 10 years. That's just your hands-on experience that needs to be evaluated only in the last 10 years. Next we have, looks like two from Zach. If I was to hold a General B as well as 2 Class C licenses, so a total of 3, could I perform, say, just a plumbing project by itself, or would I have to hire a plumber sub? Also, if I held a General B license and want to do a job that's mostly plumbing, could I do the job if, say, it included drilling through studs, framing, and then drywall repair and painting? Is that how I would determine taking on a job that has 3 trades involved? So a couple different elements there. Holding a B general classification allows you to do multiple trades on a project, but not individual trades on a project other than carpentry and framing related trades, which can be done on an individual basis. Holding the 2 other C class licenses would allow you to do individual projects in those 2 C classes. So if your 2 C classes are a painting and an electric, you wouldn't be able to contract for just a plumbing project unless you actually held the C36 plumbing classification. As far as doing a plumbing job and doing things like drilling through, if you're doing incidental work to a classification, so in other words, you're putting in a light switch in the wall, which requires you to cut through some drywall, and at the end you have to finish that off with a little touch-up painting. Those are incidental to the main part of installing the frame or the switch in the wall. So that is allowed under the original classification. It wouldn't count as 2 different trades. So if you're doing a full room drywall and painting, then you have your additional trades, which you could do under the General B in a project that required building and 2 additional trades. So incidental work to completing the main task is allowed even though you're doing small amounts of what would be considered other trades. All right. On the line for business name of company where experience gained on part 1 of the certification of work experience form, can I put my union's address? If you are a union rep in a specific trade, yes, you can put that on there. They'll also probably want you to include your union work log to verify the experience, and that would also usually be certified by your union representative. Remember that on a certification of work experience, we're looking for somebody to certify that has firsthand knowledge of the duties that they are going to list that you have performed in the description section. So if all of your work was done by union, sending out on union jobs, then, like I said, include with that your union work log so that they could show validation of the jobs that you were going out on. Our next question, owner builder. For my ADU home construction, instead of hiring a general contractor, if I hire multiple subs and manage the complete construction, will that count as supervising experience? No. Hiring a sub or a general contractor, they bring the experience to the job. Yes, you're like seeing that they completed the work that you wanted to get done, but that doesn't count as actual experience towards a particular trade. That experience goes to the sub or general contractor of the ones who actually perform the work. Does the CSLB consider overseas experience when assessing eligibility for contractor license classification? Yes, we're not restricted as to where you got the experience. We just need the same documentation. So out of state or overseas, you still need to have a certifier that has firsthand knowledge of the work that you did in that country or in that other state. If it has to be translated, then obviously the form would need to be translated into English. If there are project lists or other documents, those would also need to be translated into English and submitted with that. But yes, overseas experience can count, but you still need to have a certifier that has firsthand knowledge of that work performed in that country. How much credit would master in construction management get if I have a master's in a different field from US and college states that I should be doing a master's in construction management and not bachelor's? Bachelor's and masters count the same. It is anything bachelor's and higher will merit the same amount of credit. And once again, that will be evaluated when you send in your transcripts, as it has to do with the classification you're applying for and obviously the degree in the field and everything. So, but there's not a distinguishing difference in the amount of credit you will receive, whether it's a master's or a bachelor's. All right. I'm going to buy a house and build an ADU and do some remodeling inside the house and sell it. Most of the jobs will be done by myself. However, I hire for you contractors like framers. Do I need to have CSLB license for this kind of a job? Once again, you want to check with your permitting places, but any job, home improvement wise, that is over $500 for the job, and that's materials, labor, and it is the project itself. So building an ADU is the whole project. So if that project is over $500, you would need a contractor to perform that work, other than you can do owner builder work to a degree. But if you're hiring contractors, yes, you'd need, if you're going to have contractors on there, you would need them if the project is going to be over $500 that you are contracting for. Can I apply for two classifications together? If you're getting your license for the first time, your first application will be for one classification, as testing will be involved. If you have held classifications before and you're applying for a new license using those same classifications you have already tested and been granted, then the waiver application will allow you to do multiple classifications at a time. But for a new license, it'll be for one classification at a time. And then once you have your license established, you can one classification at a time add additional classifications to your license. I unexpectedly had to miss a good chunk of this presentation, so I'm wondering when is the next one that I can join to make sure I catch the full presentation. We do these every first Friday of the month, but also on our YouTube channel. All of these are archived, and you can link to that from our CSLB website or look for the Get Licensed to Build workshops on YouTube, and you'll find the CSLB channel, and all of the previous presentations of this are archived there as well. Where should I send my college transcripts? So have your college transcripts sent to you sealed, and then include that with your application when you send in your application. In the past, we had people send them in directly from the colleges to us, but once they get here, we have to match them up with an application coming in, and too many opportunities for those to not get matched up as the application comes in separately. So have them send them to you sealed, include that sealed transcript in with your application when you send it in to the board. All right, follow up to my first question. I completed a 5-year electrical apprenticeship in 2012, and I've been working as a journeyman foreman for various contractors since then, represented by my union. So in your case, you would probably be able to get credit for your apprenticeship. So you just want to send in your apprenticeship completions certificate along with your application. And then once again, a certification of work experience showing certified by someone who has firsthand knowledge of the work you have performed. And if that happens to be your union rep, they can certify that, put the union address as the business, and then include your union work log along with that for verification. I'm currently working as a software engineer, and I'm planning to build qualification experience by spending time in volunteer organization work. Is it considered as a part-time? I will continue full-time working current job. So with volunteer work, a lot of times that experience won't count towards your work, and you would need to show that you are actually working employed by a contractor, or because a lot of volunteer work is just not considered, depending on the work. Even Habitat for Humanity, which is a voluntary organization, most of those now are licensed individuals. So you just have to show that you actually were working for a licensed entity and be able to show that work for them was some form of employment with them. Volunteering won't count towards your experience in most classifications. What is exactly considered as part-time experience? Anything under 32 hours a week would be considered part-time. So if 32 hours and over would be considered full-time work when you're applying on the certification of work experience, and then just calculate out. So in other words, as we said in the presentation, if you're working 20 hours a week, then you would have to work 2 weeks to have a full-time 1 week amount of experience. So working 20 hours a week, you'd need twice the years of experience to make your 48 months or 4 years of experience. You have to send your fingerprints, criminal record before sending the application or after sending it. I heard that it takes 2 months to process. So the processing of fingerprinting is dependent upon the individual of how long that takes. Most of them with a live scan are much quicker than that, but some do go longer. Obviously, if you do the hard cards or the old roll the fingerprint ones, which you can do, those do take anywhere from 2 to 6 months to process. Your fingerprinting is done after we have received your application and verified it is a completed application and we have posted it. Then they will send out the live scan packet to you to have the fingerprintings done. So we'll get your application first, verify it's a completed application, post the application, and then send out the live scan form for you to have your fingerprinting done. I have mechanical engineering bachelor, worked in a construction company for 5 years, DOSH 30, and construction project management degree. Does any of these count for work credit experience? So once again, all credits for education are dependent upon the classification that you're going for. So working for a construction company for 5 years can obviously be the experience you need if the work you did for that company is the classification you're applying for. Your bachelor's degree will get you a amount of credit towards your experience requirement. Once again, the amount of that will depend on the classification you're going for and that degree. All of that will be evaluated when you send in your transcripts with your application. And as they said, don't anticipate that you would get, a full amount of 3 years of experience because it is going to be dependent upon your degree and the classification you're going for. But all of those things you mentioned, with the exception of the OSHA 30, but the degree, working for a construction company, all of that will count towards experience that will be evaluated with your application. While getting my education in construction management, will my experience working with a general contractor and supervising count? So two separate things. When you say working with a general contractor, it's working for a general contractor doing specific trades. That would count. Supervising can count towards your experience. You just want to be able to show how you became a supervisor. Typically, that's through working with a contractor and then promoting up to a supervisor. So you've done a certain amount of construction experience and then became a supervisor of the construction projects. Your education, once you have your completed degree, that will count towards your experience as well. But once again, all of those are dependent upon the classification you're going for, the classification you were working for the general contractor, and all will be evaluated off of your certificate of work experience and the transcripts that you send in with your application. In regard to get a California contractor's license, do I need to open or create an LLC or corporation, or can be done after you get the contractor's license? So one of the things you will want to know when you send in your application is the entity type that you want to do. There's no requirements of what your entity is. So you can start out with sole owner, And then later, if you form a corporation or an LLC and you want to reissue that sole owner license number to the LLC or the corporation, there are options to do that. Or you can still keep your sole owner license and still open a corporation and get a new license number for your corporation. That is an option. Or if you want to just get your LLC or corporation first and your first license is directly to the LLC or the corporation, you can do that as well. So all of those options are available to you. You get to choose what entity you want your license to be in. We don't have restrictions if you have to go a specific route as to the entity. If someone has a general contractor's license as a sole proprietor, can they also be an RMO in my license? Basically, the RMO will be working with my company as well as their own sole proprietorship. Does that RMO need to have certain ownership in the company? Yes. So if you are looking at hiring an RMO for your company, for them to be on multiple licenses, there is an ownership requirement. That is, they own 20% of each of the companies that they are qualifying for. If they are coming on as an RME, which is responsible managing employee for an additional company, they would need to inactivate their sole ownership. They don't have to close it. They just have to inactivate it, because in an RME, they have to dedicate 32 hours to the company that they are being a RME for. So they can have their sole proprietorship and then also be an RMO in another entity with 20% ownership of the other entity that they are looking to qualify. If I get 3 years of credit for education, how long do I have? How long do I need to have a RMO qualifier in my entity for me to be eligible as a qualifier for my company? So any qualifier needs 4 years of experience. That can be a combination of hands-on experience or education experience. If you have 3 years of credit for education, for you to be the qualifier, you'd need at least 1 more year of hands-on experience to meet the qualifying requirements of 48 months or 4 years of experience to be the qualifier. What options are there for people with extensive remodel experience but have no records such as tax permits to demonstrate their skills and experience? There is a ton of work one can do that does not require permit, especially if you're not moving electrical plumbing, gas lines, etc. So with my experience, how could I get the B2 remodel license? So the B2 is specific for people that have not done building experience that requires framing and building of a structure. However, it does require 3 trades on each project. So someone who does apartment work and goes in and paints, repairs drywall, and does some plumbing work, or replacing toilets, sinks, things like that. Not installing plumbing systems, but upgrading a plumbing system, like I said, replacing a sink, replacing a toilet, things like that. That would be the experience you need for the B2 remodeling license. So once again, the main thing is to have someone who can certify that they have firsthand knowledge of the work that you're performing. If that work was performed in various locations, you would need a certifier for each of those projects that you did. Or if they have, apartment maintenance where one person is aware of the work that you've done over multiple projects, they can certify it. If it's different locations, you would need a certifier that has firsthand experience in all of those locations. Once again, it's going to depend on the extent of what you're going for. So most electrical things, other than just switching out a switch or putting in recessed lighting or something like that, any heavy electrical stuff is going to require permitting, and that would be C10 work. So you just want to make sure that you're within the guidelines. Gas lines would not be, if you're hooking up appliances to an existing gas line, putting in a gas line is not going to be a non-permitted form of work. So you just want to make sure that you have 3 trades for each project. Or actually, I believe it's 4 trades for each project, and have someone to certify your experience, firsthand knowledge of the experience performed. Who's allowed to certify or sign for my 4 years of experience on the trade? I would be looking forward to get a California contractor's license. So once again, anyone who has firsthand knowledge of the work being performed. That could be a contractor that you work for. It could be an employee of the contractor that you work for. It could be another contractor that has been on the jobs that you have performed. It could be someone who just has observed the work that you have done and knows the work that you are performing, because they're the ones that are actually going to list the trades that you have performed in Section 2 of the certification of work experience. So they don't have to be a contractor and they don't have to be your employer, but they just have to have firsthand knowledge of the work you are performing. If you apply for a license as a sole owner, can you change it to an LLC later if you choose to change the entity? Yes, we kind of addressed that a little earlier. Yes, you can start off as a sole owner, and then down the road, you have the option of applying for an LLC or a corporation. You have, once again, 2 options. You can actually reissue your sole owner license to the LLC or the corporation that you've opened, or you can keep it as a sole owner and just open a new license with the LLC and the corporation. One thing to keep in mind, if you do reissue your sole owner license to an LLC or a corporation, that LLC or corporation now owns that license number. You can't transfer it back to a sole owner. You could go out and get another sole owner license, but once reissue of a sole owner to a corporation or an LLC has taken place, that number will always stay with that LLC or that corporation. Can you mention the email or web address for clarifying that you are allowed to complete a job in question based on your license? Was that classifications at cslb.ca.gov? That's correct. So that would be the email that you'd want to go to if you have question about the classification that you're doing, or if the job you are looking to perform can be performed with the classification that you hold. I would want to clarify that you said would be considered an incidental and not based on the job. So once again, incidental is something minor that has to be performed to complete the main project. So this is, it's minor work that may be another classification type of work, but it would be very incidental to the job being completed, not the majority of the project. So once again, you're installing a light switch into a wall. You have to cut the drywall, and at the end, you might have to touch up paint around where you cut that in. The majority of that job is the installing of the electrical switch. The other is incidental to completing that task. If you're putting the entire drywall up on the room, then that's not incidental. That's an actual trade work for drywall. On average, how long after the application is received and verified will tests be given? So currently, I believe our average processing time is about 2 to 3 weeks for most initial applications. But that is dependent upon that application being complete. So once the application gets here, within 2 to 3 weeks, you should have a technician reviewing that application. If it needs corrections, they'll reach out to you, get those corrections. Once they have a completed application and post it, then there is about a 3 week time frame before your testing will be assigned, and you'll actually choose the test date. So once your application is posted, you'll receive information of how to contact our authorized testing department, and you'll actually choose the date that you want to do your testing. And it can be as soon as they have testing available, but you are given an 18-month period to complete that testing once your application has been posted. All right, our next question is, I have a fine arts BFA degree and have been painting murals in independent contractor for some marketing agencies, painting exterior advertising murals. I think Class C33 license is the closest to this type of work. Do I apply for the license, then study and take the exam? How do I have to pay the $25,000 for the bond to get a license? So all of that information is on our website as far as the bonding requirements. You can get a bond through a bonding agency. There is alternatives to a bond, such as our cash deposit bonds, where you would put cash deposit on file. Once again, that is under our bonding requirements on the CSLB website. Once again, for the painting of murals, when you talk about marketing and using it as exterior advertising, you could be moving into the signage classification. So while you are painting, you're painting for various types of signage. Once again, I would recommend that you contact classifications at cslb.ca.gov. Tell them exactly the type of work you're doing, what it involves, the materials you're using, what it's being displayed on, and for what purpose. And the classifications deputy will let you know the specific classification or classifications that you'd need to perform that work. How do we go about getting a bond? Once again, there are bonding agencies out there which will issue contractors bonds. $25,000 is the initial contractor's bond. If you're doing an LLC, there are other requirements for workers' bonds and liability bonds. So be sure to check our website for all the requirements depending upon the entity that you hold. Also, once you send in an application and it's processed and you have passed your tests, they will send you a bond and fee letter that will explain your bonding requirements and your fees for the initial license fee to have your license issued. Does handyman work count towards experience? Since it's limited to $500, there are likely not a lot of projects that will require a contract. So what documents would be used to certify that experience? Once again, handyman is a very general term. It can cover a whole lot. So once again, it is dependent upon the classification that you want to apply for. And then the experience will start off with having someone certify, having firsthand knowledge of the classification experience that you have performed. If when you send that in, if there's further questions that need to be done, they will send out other a list of other documents that they may require to verify some of that work. But you're going to start with an work experience certification that is certified by someone who has firsthand knowledge of the classification trades that you have performed. I worked for Unionized Telecommunications Corporation for 25 years. Installation repair, would I submit documentation from both towards work-related qualifications? So once again, for actual work experience, we're only going to look at the last 10 years. So you just need 4 years of experience in the classification that you wanted to go for, certified by somebody that has firsthand knowledge of that experience on your certification of work experience form. Once again, only the last 10 years is what we're going to look for. So you just need somebody to have certify your work for the last 10 years. For the demolition and moving permit. I'm not sure what do we need an underlying general contractor's permit for the demolition and house moving permit? Well, demolition and house moving is an actual classification. So we don't deal in permits, we deal in licensing. So permits are usually issued by city, county. So dependent upon what requirements are needed for the permit, that's not our purview. We would be, if that project is over $500, you would need to have a license for demolition and house moving, depending upon what you're doing. Oh, it looks like there's a follow-up here. For demolition and house moving permit, is it possible to use the work you do as an owner builder on the project for use as experience in that area? So once again, owner builder experience is just for the B classification. So that would only be work you have performed on your home towards experience towards a B classification. So demolition and house moving wouldn't fall under that. So it's not really a home owner builder experience situation. So if you're going for a demolition and house moving license, you would need to have experience in demolition and house moving other than your own home. The owner builder is only going to apply for the B classification. Is there a test that you need to take for the demolition and house moving license? Yes. So once again, every license other than the very specific C61D subclassifications will have a trade exam. All licenses, even the D class licenses, you will need to pass a law and business exam. And then for all C classification specialty licenses, there will be a trade exam as well. All right. Looks like maybe one last question here. Is it better to submit several verifications from different sources for same project time frame? So the same project is only going to get that amount of time. So if you were working for a contractor building a home and you had a year experience there, just having multiple certifiers isn't going to gain any more time for it. You're only going to get the time frame for that one project, no matter how many certifiers you have. So as long as you have one certifier for that time period or project that has firsthand knowledge of your work on that project, you don't need multiple certifiers for the same time period. What would be the minimum experience education for the general contractor's license? So all licenses have the same experience education. 48 months, 4 years of experience in the classification, including the General B contractor's license, within the last 10 years. So 48 months in the last 10 years of experience in the classification for which you're applying for. All right. And seeing that's looks like that's about it for today. So once again, we do these every month, first Friday of the month. If you have other questions that we weren't able to address today, you can send an email to the address of licensing@cslb.ca.gov. Once again, that is licensing@cslb.ca.gov. If at some point you need to reschedule your exam, you can get that process started by dropping an email to exams@cslb.ca.gov. We also put together a list of available resources for women considering a career in construction. If you haven't already, be sure to download this presentation to get them. You can download the presentation on the banner at the top of our homepage at www.cslb.ca.gov. And if you're watching the archive video of this workshop on our YouTube page, you'll find a link to the presentation down below. We welcome your comments and topics for future webcasts. Just drop us an email at social@cslb.ca.gov. Special thanks to our Licensing Division and Public Affairs Office for their help on this presentation workshop. The Get Licensed to Build workshop is a copyright production of the California Contractors State License Board. Thank you for watching today.